Hey, David.
Thanks for showing up. Now, some of you have never been to see us before, and we're kind of still evolving. But when I walked in, I got grabbed by that guy, and he said, and said, I want to hear some of the scary stories of Winona in its early days when the Huff Hotel was down on East 3rd, just down the block by the Kensington. And it was just a wide clapboard building. Now, mind you, this was 1858, 1859. So the roads were dirt paths, and there was horse, everywhere you turned. There were livery stations on every corner. And everybody used to gather at the old Huff Hotel. And the Huff Hotel was where the money folks and the businessmen and the hookers and the whores hung out. See, the 3rd floor was for the ladies of the night. And it was run by a lady by the name of Lena Weinberg. Now that's a funny name for Winona. But Lena came here in 1856 on the boat of the Minnesota Packet Company. That boat company was owned and run by Orrin Smith, who founded this town and called it Montezuma. Now, I would never lie. But he indeed called Winona Montezuma. So Lena got off their boat, and there was 2 gnarly men who owned that place, the Huff Hotel. Francis Cockrell and Ezekiel McWilliams. They put Lena in charge of folding the laundry and changing the spreads, and doing all that kind of woman's work for the time. Well, they were mostly full of themselves, you see. And in no time at all, hello, Lena was running the show. She took off that laundry department. She took off the janitors and made she was the boss. And I'll tell you what, she wasn't 5 foot tall, and she was ugly as sin. She couldn't hardly speak English. She grunted when she talked, but people knew exactly what the grunter was saying. That's one of the kind of those tribal things. I know what you're talking about. You don't have to tell me, just by the way you grunt or you sigh. Well, anyway, I'd been in a writing rut. Couldn't get through. See, when I start writing, there's a release that has to say, so an energy has to get out of me. It had been stuck inside me for a good 3 weeks. You know what it's like being all wrapped up in a ball for 3 weeks, week on end. You got unstable thinking the way to begin with. And it goes and it goes and it goes, and then And then it pops. And sure enough, my buddy Kenny showed up. I had first met Kenny in 1977. The start of my road through schizophrenia. I was hearing voices. And I was scared when this guy started talking. But he told me I was there the night Lena Weinberg grabbed Ezekiel Williams and squeezed and twisted and pulled enough so that the walls of the Huff Hotel started shaking. And Kenny says Williams left the place, left that bar red-faced and went running straight down across Johnson. And Lena stood at the entrance to the bar with her arms crossed. Looked at every one of the employees, looked at every person at the bar, saying, "Try me."
Thank you very much, Merle. This is, okay, this is a story that I've always wanted to tell and never had any excuse to. I guess I got one now. I call it The Simpsons. Now, you might think of the epic TV show of which I've never watched really a single episode. I don't know why that is. I just never did. When I think of The Simpsons here in Winona, I think of two gentlemen. Well, okay, one gentleman and another guy who shared that last name. They were both founding fathers of the city of Winona, formerly known as Montezuma. Was also going to be named Wabasha with a W on the end. They didn't know what they were going to name it. It was called Wabasha's Prairie back in 1852 and 1853. But I want to tell you about a couple of guys who showed up in Winona about 1855, and they shared a last name, but they were not brothers. They were Verrazano Simpson, as in Verrazano Narrows, Verrazano Straits, the great Verrazano. No, I don't know how to spell that because he didn't know how to spell it either. It's spelled various different ways. He's most often known in Winona history, and I call him this too, as V. Simpson. Then there was Thomas Simpson. Thomas Simpson, Verrazano Simpson was born in New York in 1830. Thomas Simpson was born in Scotland in 1836. That's the point. He was a really nice guy. His wife was a really nice woman named Isabella Margaret Holstein Simpson. She was the patroness of the Civil War widows and orphans house, and was the name of a Margaret Simpson home for people who were needy. She was that nice of a person, and he was a fitting husband for her. He was a really nice guy. But Verrazano Simpson was not. One of the nice ways about learning your Winona history is by reading these great, big, huge, whopping books full of too much information about the movers and shakers of Winona. You can thrill to the recounting of Aunt Catherine Smith's grandfather who was in the Revolutionary War. And I'm like, what has that got to do with Winona? That's always my bottom line. I like hearing stories, but when I'm in Winona, I like to hear stories about Winona, and I like to tell stories about Winona because I like Winona that much. Basically, with me, you're getting all Winona. And boy, Verrazano Simpson was a Winona original. Came here in about 1855, 56. He ran a grocery store. Then he started doing real estate. When the city burned down in 1862, he lost all of his money, went and made some more, got rich again, and went back into real estate. He was a big wheel in social and political circles in Winona. He was an alderman at one point. And in 1871, Verrazano Simpson decided that he was going to run for mayor. But during, this is just really a crappy thing that he did. He horsewhipped his wife, Mrs. Ann Simpson, right out in front of their house on Lafayette Street, the 50 block of Lafayette Street. His wife and daughter were standing over there, and his wife was kind of mocking him. And apparently, wives were not allowed to mock their husbands in 1871. I don't know. I came from a tradition where wives were expected to mock their husbands. I wish my wife were still mocking me now. I wouldn't be here. But she was teasing about something, and he reached for the horsewhip, and he put 3 good licks on her. What did this do? What did this do to his political campaign? What did this do to his political chances in Winona? What should it have done? She divorced him. I mean, in 1871, women didn't divorce their husbands. She divorced him. And it was all over the newspapers. That's one good thing I got to say about the Winona newspapers back then. They were all over all the crap. And we've got this great big huge Winona newspaper project with all the evil things that people did in this town. And all you got to do is just go punch. If you think I'm making this up, this is just a story about me, and I'll go back to my other story in a second. I told my dad when he was living down by me in Springfield, Missouri, I said, Dad, I found something out about you, Dad. What's that, son? Is my pension still coming in? That's all he cared about. And now I know why. He was sitting there, and I said, Dad, I just read in the newspaper that Raymond F. Hughes, age 27, of 603 Wilson Street, was fined $35 for drunken driving after he hit a parked car with his car in front of his parents' house. I said, Dad, you never told us about that. He said, well, and he said, son, I did a lot of dumb bleep that you're never going to hear a word about. But it's all in there. I guess that Mrs. Simpson took old Verrazano Simpson to the cleaners. He had to sell off property to get her off his case, and I think that is just splendid. It didn't stop him from getting elected mayor 4 years in a row. And meanwhile, Thomas Simpson was doing things like being a lawyer, founding the Second National Bank, and building that beautiful little building on the corner of Second and Main. Is it Second and Main? No, it's Second and Center. Second and Center. It used to be Betty Joe's, and then it's a kind of, what is it now? Clara Louise. It's now Clara Louise. Thank you. It's a beautiful building. Thomas Simpson built that. Thomas Simpson was also the director of the Winona Normal School, which meant that he was the person in Winona to whom all important questions about the normal school had to be mentioned.
Man, the house that's still standing across the street was owned by James Simpson. So when you look at Simpson, they were everywhere. And I don't see that name much. around anymore.
No, and it's well, I mean, to rehearse an old gripe, which you have heard me blather about 9 million times. I mean, like, I am so sick and tired of the Bunnell family. I hope I never hear a word about the Bunnell family again. I just don't because there's so much other interesting and wonderful stuff that doesn't get noticed, like this. Bad of a guy as Verrazano Simpson was, and he was also very civic-minded. In 1887, the people of Winona the city fathers of Winona decided we need another railroad. The Milwaukee Road, the Northwestern, the Burlington, the Green Bay and Western are all screwing Winona remorselessly. We need a home-owned railroad to go in there and be there for us. Man, it just didn't work. It was a railroad that never should have been built. And Verrazano Simpson himself lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, along with many of the other wealthy people of Winona who put their money on the line. And if you can believe this, he was even the president of the railroad. Imagine being the president of a bankrupt railroad with no money, and basically you're just trying to get it stabilized and sell it off. He did that too. So my takeaway from the story of the two Simpsons, and I mean, it is just about over. It goes like this, that there were, some really lousy people. Colonel Cockrell was a fake colonel. I mean, Ezekiel Williams was just as slimy as Merle says he is, at least as slimy as Merle says he is, and
I told you I'd tell the truth.
Sometimes. But why should you be any different from me?
Exactly.
I don't know. Ezekiel E.W. Williams is also basically the father of Woodlawn Cemetery. I mean, it was kind of his idea, and he's buried in some of the one of the most beautiful locations. And you know who's buried in the same plot?
Lena is buried in the same. Can you imagine how much they're arguing down there? Oh, they didn't get along.
Almost to the point where, I've already got my permanent address. 1333 Old Homer Road, Winona, Minnesota, 55987. Come on by. Come and see me. I'll be there forever. But it's almost worth being buried in Woodlawn just to hang out and listen to what's going on over there. Okay, that's what I got. Thanks.
Joe gets talking, and he starts getting my head tingling. I start hearing about these old folks. I mean, we come from special people. And one of my favorite ladies of all time was Brewer Norton. Now, I met her, of course, in 1977. I was beginning to lose my mind. And so I was out trying to walk, because I was hearing voices and noises and sounds are coming out of the house and other people. And I'd look between two spots, like right there, and I'd hear noise. That's that schizophrenia. It's the way of seeing. Oh, I ran. Oh, I've met some interesting people. And sometimes I can't, I swear, I can't tell if they're real or not. For a long time, I didn't like to admit that. I mean, would you? But I met her in 1977. That was long before I ran into Science Girl and countless others. I was out trying to walk it off. Oh, I got to get away from these voices. I got to get away from these sounds. So I'm walking down there by the Hannibal Choate House, which is on 5th and Huff, one in. It was across the Y, one in, two-story. Julie Grabowski lived there. And I sat down on the steps because I felt something on those steps. That's the thing we hear when you not only hear voices, you feel different things. Because your mind's been split. That's what schizophrenia is all about. Your mind is split in two. White and dark, left and right, forward, backwards. Oh, I'm a messed up guy. I survived. But in 1977, I met Beulah Norton. She was beautiful. She sat down next to me, and her hair was just kind of twisted and twirled around. Kind of. And she was welcoming. She lit the cigarette, and she started talking, and I lit my own kind of cigarette, and we started talking back and forth. Across generations, across time zones, across great distances. And she talked about her family. Now, when Beulah was a young lady, you see, she was part of the Laird Norton family. And that parking lot that used to hold the Y, which is down a one brick house on Broadway and Huff, right over there, was once a house. And it was a big house because it took up a Winona city block. It finally came down in 1941. Beulah Norton died in 1939. They always kept that home open for Beulah. You see, when Beulah was young, her older brother, Gavin, was out at Harvard going to school. You know, we didn't send, those people didn't send their kids to Winona State or community. They sent their kids to Harvard. And he was out there, and Mr. Norton got a call. Said, your child's died. He's got meningitis. So old man Norton headed out, and the newspaper must have followed him because they gave report by report, telegraph as he was going out there. He didn't make it in time, and his son died, and they brought him back. When they brought him back, they had a funeral. And this town circled the block, and circled the block hours to pay their respects. And if you look at their pictures, you look at a picture of old man Norton, and look at his son, his first son. Oh, you want to talk about a spitting image. You could see it at a young age. Well, his second son, but named James. James kind of beat to a little different drummer. Oh, he went out to Harvard too. But he was never meant to run the business. Everybody said so. They used to have a tennis club down there. I forgot what they called it. No, you could see all the kids' pictures. They hung together like glue, or hung together like Chad smelly stuff, you know. But they didn't expect James. But James, 6 months later, took his own life. Took his own life, killed himself. Soft heart disease, they called it. All that money, all that pain. You get that much money, you think, I'm invincible. Yeah. Put you right in your place. Beulah fell apart. Beulah fell apart. And the newspaper would report she went to the sanatorium. north of Appleton, Wisconsin. And then she came home, and then she went back, forth every time. Beulah got no better. She fell into that depth of depression and never came out. She wore all black clothes. She wore all black. She went through life in a fog. I mean, the Nortons had the cash. They tried everything. They tried absolutely everything. They had a place out in the Pacific Ocean. And built a special home out there for Beulah. But Winona was home to Beulah. But it affected them all in that household deeply. Because they soon moved from Winona to California and turned over the reins of the company downward. They all moved away. Mrs. Norton told the helpers, the gardeners and the cleaning people, they were never to open the rooms of the two older brothers again. And Beulah would come back now and then, and she'd go to the church groups and do her kind of thing. But Beulah was never right. That family had a lot. The other side of the family had a misfortune that hit them over the head too. And Winona was so connected. Everybody knew everybody because they talked. And then they talked. And the stories would go from wherever they were to the East End, to the West End. They go through a lot of bars. And so you never really knew what the end story would be by the time it got to Goodview or got east of Old Stone Road, which is what I call Mankato. I mean, we come from special cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles. Those are where our myths come from. How many of you had coffee at Ruth's Restaurant? See? 3, and we have the owner of Ruth's Restaurant here tonight. Her mother owned the place. Her mother was Ruth of Ruth's Restaurant. And do you know what? People talk about Ruth yet. And they loved the cooking. It's where businessmen would gather and they'd have their lunches. And she hired, your mama hired my Aunt Darlene Johnson. And if your mama wasn't there keeping those boys in line, because you got to keep Winona boys in line, you know. Darlene Johnson was doing it on the night shift. Because that's what Winona was about. We all knew each other. It was the most magnificent town in the world to grow up in. And you know what? I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, mine was the most magnificent time was the 50s. And somebody else said, mine was the most magnificent time. And you go right up. People together are what the experience of Winona is. Anyway, you know, we got more scary stories. Stories of people, characters, their souls, their I got a lot of family that's got stubbed toes and blackened eyes and broken minds. And I've shared some good stories with your husband in the back alley of 8th and talking about old Cotter down at the boathouses down at Old Cotter. And I knew Frank. Frank was my next door neighbor. So you know a lot of people in the crowd. And known David a long time. So thanks for coming and listening. I don't know what time it is. I lose track of time.
Okay. We still got time for this one. A Winona original. Let me make sure I got this thing up. There we go. I'm going to tell you about a real Winona original who wasn't even born in Winona. She was born in Pepin, Wisconsin in 1902. Her father was a steamboat captain named W.L. Hunter, who in 1915 as captain of the Ottumwa Belle, took the last raft of logs down the Mississippi River. And we're going to meet W.L. Hunter again. He's going to become almost like the mascot of steamboat days, but that's not until they invent steamboat days in 1948. That's a long ways off. First of all, I got to tell you about Blanche. The Hunter family moved to Winona in the early 1910s, and young Blanche Hunter attended Winona High School. And for the record, talk about everybody knows everybody. Merle knows this because he saw when it happened. I didn't know who the hell Blanche Hunter even was until about a year and a half ago, right here, when a woman named Andrea said, "Oh, I live in a house that was formerly owned by Blanche Hunter." And I go, like, huh? It happens all the time. And now I'm obsessed. I'm going to tell you about Blanche Hunter now. Blanche Hunter attended Winona High School, and she, there's a picture of her that I found online. She looks kind of like a flapper. She reputedly was very short, walked with a limp, and always wore black. And she graduated from high school, got a job at Merchants Bank because she wanted to go into business for herself. Her dad set her up in business in 1924. The business turned out to be a gas station called the Gopher Oil Company. It was located at 4th and Johnson Street, right next to where the History Center now is, where that little shop is. That was the Gopher Oil Company. Captain Hunter was president because he was a guy. The secretary of the company was C. Blanche Hunter. She ran the whole thing. Not only that, in 1929, she bought some land out by Highway 14/61 in Mankato Avenue. It was right across from a place you may know as the Hot Fish Shop. And it was flat as a board. It was no use for growing anything, and it flooded, and Blanche put a gas station there. She put a gas station at the corner of Highway 61 and Mankato Avenue. I'm here to tell you people, I buy my gas at this gas station all of the time now in her honor, because Blanche's second gas station was on the site of that Sinclair station up by the Sugarloaf Roundabout. She built a gas station there in 1929. And then it went bankrupt because she really wasn't much of she wasn't much of a gas station manager. So she started up the Wind Teepee Cabins. The Wind Teepee Cabins were your typical roadside tourist cabins, run by a high-minded woman on sound business principles. This is how high-minded she was. I mean, it was your basic, standard campsite, roadside cabin, right under Sugarloaf. You could get kind of like DoorDash, I guess, from the Hot Fish Shop. And you could rent the rooms by the month, by the week, by the hour, by the day, the hour, and the half hour. And everybody in town knew this. Blanche also offered the Deer Hunter Special. If you are kind of a hunting kind of guy living up around the cities, you want to come down to Winona's fabled swamplands to go hunting your deer, Come on down. Blanche has got a special for you. You can hang out in one of her shacks all week with suitable companionship, doing whatever you want. And on Saturday evening, one of Blanche's people will drop in the back of your truck a dead deer killed by a gunshot wound for you to show your wife to tell her when you tell her what a great hunter you are. And she did these things. She also was a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, which is the women's auxiliary of the Masons. It was the most prestigious female social arrangement, arguably, how the hell would I know, in Winona. She was best friends forever with the society editor of the Winona Daily Republican Herald, who was Gretchen Lamberton. Two Winona families in one, the Light German printers and the almighty Lambertons.
You would believe that no newspaper covering their divorce when it happened. Blow by blow, blow by blow.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Merle. I guess I'm going to check that out. I never found out her middle name. I'm just thinking, oh, how sweet. You know me, like, oh. And there's a column where Gretchen Lamberton writes, oh, I dropped in on Blanche Hunter this afternoon. She was just pulling a threat cake of Johnny cake out of the oven for her dear old father. Captain Hunter loves his Johnny cake. We sat in the exquisite trees and flowers and all the crap that these people did and stuff. And I'm thinking Blanche was at home with that in that world too. And Blanche Hunter was also into real estate. Blanche Hunter rented and sold houses to people, a contract for deed. She would carry the mortgage. She'd probably charge you pretty good interest. And Merle and I have a friend who lives over does Diane live over at, Diane Gappa, she's the one who always said, she and her husband rented from Blanche Hunter after they got married. And I said, well, what did you guys, any memories of Blanche Hunter? And she goes, yeah, pay the rent. Blanche Hunter did well for herself. A single woman, never wanted to marry, lived life by her own terms. She got caught in a traffic checkpoint out in Winona in 1931. She's driving a car on her own, which women just didn't do in 1931, and they stopped her, and they said she was having trouble stopping her car. It turned out she was using the parking brake because her foot couldn't reach the regular brake. At least that's what she told the judge the next morning in court, and the judge says, well, that's too bad. I fine you $15 or a week in the slammer. And Blanche goes, you better bring my knitting needles because it looks like I'm going to need them. And she went into the slammer, this woman of integrity, and she emerged 2 hours later. I'm out of here. The newspaper had a lot of fun with that because Blanche gave them hell. There's a local woman changed his mind. Ha, ha, ha. They had to print a retraction the next day. Blanche explained that her friends had come to bail her out. And you may or may not believe it, but the newspaper sure printed it. When it came time for Blanche to pass from the scene, her time was up in the 1960s when they decided to build that great big huge hotel and gas station complex out by Sugarloaf. We'll just call it that. They built a great big Linehan's restaurant. They built a great big Holiday Inn and a Phillips gas station on land that was purchased from Blanche Hunter. And you want to bet Blanche took them to the cleaners, and she did. She sold it all to the developers except for one little portion. The portion that the gas station still sits on to this day. That she only rented. And the rental she got for that place would every month buy her a new 1964 Chevy. And when she passed, she left her money to charity, and she was remembered briefly. But you will not find Blanche Hunter mentioned in any of the very pitifully few Winona history books. You don't find stories about her, in all of the picture books with the blurbs about this building, this person, and all of that. She ain't there. Winona has forgotten Blanche Hunter. Not. Thank you very much.
Pardon? I got 446. Oh. We got, go for it.
Hey, I think I'm going to read a story.